Teresa of Avila lived in the 1500s, and she was a very interesting Christian meditator. She was a Carmelite nun, and she in fact revamped the Carmelites and included contemplative meditation into the Carmelite way of living. Perhaps her most famous set of writings is called the Interior Mansions. It's based on the chapter from John 14:12, where Jesus said, "In my Father's house there are many mansions. I will go there to prepare one for you." And she talks in her writings about meditating in different ways. She starts off, there are 4 levels of meditation, or prayerful meditation as she describes it. She was asked actually to describe what mental prayer was, which is the form of Christian meditation we're talking about here. And at the time, most people did vocal prayer, which is speaking to God, asking God for help and guidance, etc. But mental prayer was a form of meditation that allowed you to go to this quiet place, a place of stillness, a place often of happiness and bliss. And if that sounds familiar to many of the other forms of meditation that I've discussed earlier, then you're right. They're very, very similar. So in the simplest form, her meditation was to envision Christ in front of you, with you, quietly. And as you develop this, as you develop the image, you start to relate to Christ on a personal basis. So her whole effort was to try to help people to become friends with God and with Christ. And so through this meditation, you eventually end up in the process starting to have a conversation with Jesus. And this is not a speech. It's not where you are talking to God, telling him all of the problems, etc. You're having a conversation. So her process would be pretty simple. She would start by reading a passage from the Bible, or perhaps just saying the Lord's Prayer or some other prayer that she particularly felt inspired to think about. She would then have some contemplation on that particular set of writing. Then she would move into this quiet state where she would start to commune with God. And at the highest level of her meditations, she felt totally at one with God. So again, if you go through my book, Taming the Tiger, and you start looking at some of the meditations, we go through that process. We go through a process of mindfulness, breathing, learning to calm the self, learning to deal with the thoughts as they arise, which is also parts of Teresa's 7 levels of prayer, where the first 3 levels are really dealing with the negative thoughts that come up, the demons, depending on which terminology you want to use. But basically, the negative emotions that arise within you. She then moves on to the experiencing bliss and ecstasy as we do in our meditations. And then finally to achieve that state of absolute quiet, absolute stillness, where you feel that communion with God. It's all from the heart. It's all about love and compassion. And it's feeling that towards everyone who is on the face of the planet. She was a very interesting woman, and particularly way ahead of her time. And the fact that she managed to get this massive change done in the Carmelite order, it itself ended up influencing many other of the meditative schools that came out of Christian meditation later. Unlike many of the mainstream Christian religions that tend to distance themselves from Eastern meditation, Teresa actually even said in her writings that she really respected individuals who were able to go to those real depths of meditation. One of the key things that Teresa brought to the Christian meditation tradition was her agreement with St. Augustine, who said that you may look everywhere for God, but you will eventually find God within. Like many meditative traditions, Teresa was also very interested in self-discipline, and she brought that degree of self-discipline to the Carmelite meditative orders. She's quoted as saying that you should be gentle with everyone, but stern with yourself. So be well, be happy, meditate.